Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in good spirits wherever you are in the world. And continuing with our discussion of the films released by the Criterion Collection during this year, 2020, please allow me, if I may, to share with you some thoughts that I have with respect to the release by the Criterion Collection under spine number 1023. The back of the Blu-ray indicates the year being 1969, and the filmmaker is Juraj Herz. And the name of the film, and please forgive me for my poor pronunciation in Czech, is Spalovač mrtvo. So Spalovač mrtvo, or in English, The Cremator. Cremator in Czech is Spalovač mrtvo, and it's given the title Cremator in English, although I understand that the title could also be translated into English as The Burner of Corpses or The Incinerator of Corpses. And I think that is also a very apt title if you know this film, because this film is a very dark, chilling, frightening, horrific work that is dealing with the concept of death in a very specific way, dealing with it in the context of the World War II past, and in particular the Holocaust, and the echoes that such a theme and a thematic subject matter will bring with it in terms of an artistic expression, or trying to deal with this kind of very serious and very almost immediate subject matter. So that's one thing that's going on. It is also a kind of political allegory. We have to remember this film was being made in 1968, 1969, or it was made in 1968 and it was released in 1969, and we have to remember also the events that the nation, that Czechoslovakia at the time was facing, in terms of, as you know, the Prague Spring, and then the invasion of Soviet forces and certain Warsaw Pact nations into Czechoslovakia in August of 1968. And so all this stuff is in the air in terms of this particular film. And so there is so much that is at the heart of this film, both in terms of a historic past and also a contemporary present, again, 1968. And when we watch this film, I think it's very important to try to keep those in mind as much as possible. At the same time, of course, in the immediacy of the film, we have a darkly chilling, very darkly comic work. This film is a film that has a lot of comic tones to it that are at once funny and disturbing. This film has a deep sense of morbid fascination with its subject matter, and it has a kind of absurdist, surrealist aspect to it that gives it a really memorable and unforgettable visual style that adds to this sense of the morbid, the macabre, and the frightening and the horrific that is, again, combined in a way that is also surreal, and by extension, therefore, oftentimes very funny and off-putting. And so all these mixtures of different tones collide in this incredibly artistically profound and deep work that, as I was trying to suggest, is doing so many things at once, both in terms of the past and the present, and in terms of art and reality. And this depiction of this particular this particular subject matter, at the heart of this subject matter is the performance, the great performance by Rudolf Herszynski as the character of Karel Kopfelkingel. So Karel Kopfelkingel is the main character here, and his presence, his characterization, his existence in this film is one of those truly unforgettably frightening things that one might come across in one's journey of cinema. Kopfelkingel's mannerisms, his discussions with the characters and with us, the viewers, and the way that he interacts with the world, and the way that he looks at sex and death and family and relationships, and ultimately the decisions that he is confronted with, all combine with a sense of presenting the human psyche and the human condition with a really twisted, absurdist, surrealist take that really takes us down a path and a journey into the absurd, into the frightening, into the dark, and into the various caverns of madness that really show and really come to the fore in this brilliantly horrifying work of cinema. This is such a profound and a very dark work, and it's highly, highly recommended if you haven't seen it already. What a fantastic performance. So Rudolf Herszynski as Karel Kopfelkingel is a kind of one-of-a-kind cinematic creation. Once you see him, you will never forget him. Let me put it that way. And it's a brilliant performance at the center of a brilliant film with great control and a great sense of style and substance and being from this filmmaker, Uri Hertz. So this is the film, The Cremator. Now, speaking of this film on the Criterion Collection, we must just mention what this Criterion Collection release has to offer. Now, from the outset, I should mention that this film has been released, I think, a number of times already on DVD in many countries other than the United States. And so if you have a past DVD of this, that's really wonderful. So it has been made available. In addition, I should point out that it also has been made available on a Blu-ray other than the Criterion Collection, at least as far as I'm aware. I'm aware of at least one other Blu-ray, which was from 2017, and this is from the Great People at Second Run from the United Kingdom. The Blu-ray is right here. This is from a UK label, Second Run. However, I should point out that this particular Blu-ray is region A, B, and C. And so that is really nice as well. There are some differences between this particular Blu-ray from Second Run and this new Blu-ray from the Criterion Collection. And I'll try to get into those as detailed as I can. But just keep in mind that there are other releases other than the Criterion Collection version, so just in case you are interested. And I'll get to this in one moment. But focusing first on the Criterion Collection release, we have, first of all, a restoration of this film, which is indicated as in the back as being a new 4K digital restoration. So this is a Blu-ray presentation of a new 4K digital restoration of the film, which, according to the materials included in the disc itself, was a restoration from 2019. And so if that's the case, then this is a fresh, new restoration. And by my eye, it looks like the quality of the image is slightly different than the earlier Blu-ray from Second Run. Don't get me wrong, the Second Run Blu-ray is really superb and magnificent, but there is a slight difference in terms of picture quality and in terms of what we get here in the Criterion Collection release. It's absolutely stunning. The presentation by Criterion here of this new 4K digital restoration is absolutely stunning. It feels wider, it feels more open, and you can see all of the shadows and the lines and the fisheye lens and everything at work and all the little details. So this is a truly a great presentation. So it's wonderful to have. Don't get me wrong, the second run Blu-ray presentation is really, really good as well. So if you are looking for the second run Blu-ray, I think that's really great. But the Criterion presentation of this new restoration is superb. So there is that film itself. Then we have a number of separate supplements on this particular Criterion release. So the first is a 23-minute sort of behind-the-scenes, present-day, sort of almost like a travel log or a little bit of a documentary. And this is covering Uri Hertz, the director himself, and it's called The Way to the Cooling Chambers. And my understanding is this was originally produced in 2011 to coincide with the release of this film on a German DVD. And you can actually see Uri Hertz being followed by what looks to be a German film crew as he is visiting the various crematoria, I think, that are the crematorium sites, the actual crematorium sites that were used as the sites for the filming of particular scenes of this film, The CREMATOR. So this is a fascinating look at the sites that exist today, or at least at the time, 2011, so present day. And we see Uri Hertz interacting with the German film crew and also interacting with the people on the ground working in these crematorium places. And it's really great. I understand that there were different locations that were used for purposes of the filming, and so we have different places that the crew and Uri Hertz are visiting. Really great. I should note also that we see the director Hertz speaking in Czech, of course, when he's talking to the people who work at the crematorium, for example, but he's also speaking in German. I understand that he's speaking in German here to the German film crew, so that's really interesting. So he's speaking German and he's speaking Czech, so there's that. And along the way, we hear him talk a little bit about some aspects of the filming of the film itself, working with the director of photography, Stanislav Milota. And he's talking also about the filmmaker E.G. Menzel, who, as you know, also is a sort of contemporary filmmaker during what's known as the Czech New Wave. But also, E.G. Menzel is very significant as far as this film is concerned because, as you know, he actually is a part of the cast. He is one of the actors who appears in this film in the role of Dvorak. And so E.G. Menzel has a link to this film in terms of his appearance. So it's nice to hear Uri Hertz in this particular documentary make mention of particular people involved in this film, including Menzel himself. So that's a really good one. So this isn't a Criterion. I should be very clear. Criterion indicates this as being originally produced in 2011 and then re-edited by the Criterion Collection in 2019. And the filmmakers behind this documentary are indicated as being Daniel Bird, Alexander Benecke, and Carson Beersdorfer. And so we have what appears to be material originally shot or prepared in 2011 and then reworked in some form or another by the Criterion Collection in 2019. So once again, I don't know the original 2011 documentary, so I can't make any formal comparative analysis, but that's just to let you know what the Criterion disc indicates, at least in the menu. So this is material that was produced in 2011 but then reworked in some form or another in 2019 by the Criterion Collection, again at 23 minutes, included as the first extra supplement for this release. And then the second supplement is a one-on-one interview, about 17 minutes and 30 seconds. This is by the Criterion Collection itself. It says it's from 2019. This is called Madness and the Macabre, and this is with Irena Kovarova, and she is being interviewed and talking about Uri Hertz, his life and his career, and his education and upbringing, and also his role in the Czech New Wave, but I think more specifically how he became a filmmaker, the way in which he became a filmmaker. And it was a very almost interestingly circuitous route that he took before eventually becoming the filmmaker that he was, making films like The Cremator and otherwise. She mentions also a very interesting connection that Uri Hertz has with another contemporary, a very, very close contemporary, Jan Schwankmajer, and also Hertz's position and role in the Czech New Wave itself, and also more broadly, of course, in the Czech film and television industry. And also she then goes into specifics about this film itself, certain aspects of the detail and the production, and the way that certain shots were used or certain shots were planned and what they mean. And she also goes into some details about a particular ending that was planned but wasn't eventually included in the final cut of the film, and things of that nature. And so she goes into so much great detail about the filmmaker Uri Hertz, and then also the film The Cremator. And this is therefore a very essential viewing for anyone who wants to try to get a little bit more in terms of watching this film, The Cremator. So this is, again, essential viewing. You should watch it afterwards, after you've seen the film, because there are details that she provides that are specific to the plot itself. But once you've seen the film, you can go to this interview with Irena Kovarova, and you can just enjoy what it is she has to say. An incredibly insightful interview, and really one of the best. So once again, this is called Madness and the Macabre. But that's not all, because then we have a documentary. This appears to be a non-Criterion documentary, but it is still a great one, from 2017, 54 minutes. This is called Hudba Zdeněk Liška, or Music by Zdeněk Liška. So the composer, Liška, is at the center and subject of this particular 54-minute documentary. And Liška, as you may know, provided the music for many, many films and television. But in particular, Liška provided the music for this film. So his score is accompanying the film The Cremator, and oh my goodness, what a musical score it is. And it's so wonderful to see this very long, in-depth documentary, lovingly made, and it's really dedicated to all the lovers of Liška's music out there. And in fact, many of the great admirers of Liška's music are featured in this particular documentary, including, of course, Uri Hertz himself, and also Jan Schwankmajer, and also the Quay brothers, or the brothers Quay. And so this is a very fascinating work. And listening to these artists express their admiration and deep respect for Liška as a sound artist and a musician, someone who's also keenly aware of the importance of film language and editing and the integration of sound and image, and the varied scope of his career in terms of a musician, because as this documentary indicates, Liška was a composer that had many different styles under his belt. And so this is such a wonderfully rich and dense documentary, lovingly put together, dedicated to Liška and his music. And it's also great because we also see the vast scope of Liška's involvement in the Czech film and television industry. And therefore, we see that this documentary can serve in a way as a kind of catalog journey through the development of the Czech film industry, and also television as well, through the 60s and 70s and 80s. And so this is a kind of great sort of journey or cataloging, or almost a kind of primer, if you will, of various stops along the way in terms of Czech film. And so in that way, it's an interesting kind of survey Czech films, at least the ones that Liška was involved with. So it's a great documentary in many respects. So once again, this is music by Zdeněk Liška. And then we continue with an interview program, which, according to the Criterion materials, was broadcast in 2011, but was in fact produced in 1993. And this is with the actor Rudolf Hrsinski. And as you know, Rudolf Hrsinski is the main star of this film, The Cremator. So he plays Kopfkingel. And so his Kopfkingel is one of the most memorable characters in cinema. And so Hrsinski's words and his interview here is quite fascinating. It's taken maybe less in the context of The Cremator and more in the context of his current, or at the time of the interview, his work on stage, theater acting. But also it goes into his family and the level of respect that he had in his home country, and also the various opportunities that he might have had outside of his home country, etc., and working with artists, and his acting craft and his approach to acting as well. It's 15 minutes, but it's still very packed with a lot of information. And again, Rudolf Hrsinski, to have his words and his mannerisms and his facial gestures and the look in his eyes as he speaks, so deep, so magnetic, so charming. So this is wonderful to have once again. And also I should say it does feature not just Hrsinski, but also it features E.G. Menzel as well in a brief moments of some comments with respect to the great actor. So wonderful supplement from Criterion. Again, it's not a Criterion produced supplement, but it's something that is taken from other materials, and once again it has a nice spotlight on the main actor and star of this film. So that's another great supplement to check out. And then we have a short film, about 30 minutes, from 1965, which is called The Junk Shop. And this is a short film that was directed by Hertz, and it also has music by Liška, and it was based on a story by Hrabal. And if one recognizes that name and also The Junk Shop, one will probably recognize that The Junk Shop had actually been intended to be one of the segments in the film from 1966 called Pearls of the Deep. And what I have here is the film Pearls of the Deep as it appeared on a DVD by Criterion in its Eclipse line. So Pearls of the Czech New Wave is the Eclipse box, and one of the DVDs included is Pearls of the Deep. And in fact, the story is that this film Junk Shop would have been included as one of the shorts, the segments in this film Pearls of the Deep, but due to certain running time factors, it wasn't included. And so, but we have the short film intact here as one of the supplements. And again, it's interesting to see the way in which camera movements are used, the way in which certain senses of visuals are sort of a irreverent style are being employed, the use of close-ups and the use of quick editing and the integration of sound and image and music and image to create a kind of cinematic frenzy on the one hand, and also kind of a delightful dry wit on the other. And so it's a fascinating look in terms of the kind of storytelling that Hertz was concerned with even back in 1965. Again, just a few years prior to the film The Cremator. So that's good to have. So there's that. And then there's the trailer as well. So we have a lot here. Really wonderful stuff, and we have the insert here. So the Blu-ray is like this and on the back, and then I've taken out the insert already, which is this. It's one of these fold-outs. So if we go back like this, the fold-out insert is like so, And then we have the information about the transfer, and then the cast and crew information for the film and also for the Criterion release. And then the essay is No One Will Suffer by Jonathan Owen. And this is a wonderfully dense and packed essay. I really love this because, again, like the supplement on the Criterion Collection Blu-ray interview with Irena Kovarova, this essay by Jonathan Owen goes into specifics of Hertz's career, his family, his upbringing. I mentioned that this film, one of the themes of this film is death, and certain aspects of the rise of Nazism, and then the eventual links with the Holocaust. And we have to remember also Hertz's background and family and upbringing. And he, as a human being, has a very direct, quite tragic connection in his own life with the concentration camps. And so these aspects are brought up in various parts of the supplements, but also in this essay, and then which therefore is very, I think, thematically relevant, as if we want to call it that, in terms of how we can see Hertz and the way he is working with this material in the context of the CREMATOR. So this is just one example of how helpful and useful and important reading this essay is. And it goes also into his career and his sensibilities as a filmmaker and artist, and also it goes into the film itself and certain details of the film that I think will be helpful for anyone trying to find a specific reading for this. And the sort of the way in which the film warps its perspective as it goes along, and it follows Kopfrel-Kingel's sort of journey, if you will, into sort of the dark and the macabre, if you will. So a wonderful and dense and well-packed and well-written and essential essay. Once again, No One Will Suffer by Jonathan Owen. So this is the Criterion release. Now, I should mention that second run Blu-ray that I had mentioned earlier, because as I mentioned, this had been released on a second run Blu-ray, which is what I have here. Now, the film itself is the same, although I did make mention of the fact that the presentations look very different. The second run Blu-ray is really, really great. Don't get me wrong, it looks great. The Criterion presentation looks a little bit better, but just a little bit. But I think the second run release is still quite superb. But that's not all, because what we get on the second run Blu-ray is this. First, there is, at least according to the back, a filmed introduction by the Quay brothers. Now, the Quay brothers, of course, have a very deep connection with Czech cinema, and so it's very relevant that they have an introduction on this particular Blu-ray. I should point out, though, maybe as a technical defect, I'm not sure, I'm unable to play the filmed introduction by the Quay brothers. I select it on the menu, I press it, but for whatever reason it never plays, and so I've never been able to access the Quay brothers introduction on this particular Blu-ray. I don't know what it's like for any other Blu-rays. I'm not sure if it's just a flaw in this particular copy or anything else. I'm not sure, but as I say, that's the situation with this particular Blu-ray. But according to the back, it's supposed to be there, and so if you have this Blu-ray and you can access the Quay brothers introduction, wonderful. I'm very happy for you, and I hope you enjoy it. Then it also includes the short film, The Junk Shop from 1965, which we also have on the Criterion disc, so that's good. And then it has a 2017 episode of a podcast called The Projection Booth. And this is a podcast episode which is talking about this particular film, The CREMATOR, and it's a very interesting, engaging podcast, so it's really good to have that as well. And then what's really great about this particular second run Blu-ray, though, is that in addition to all these other supplements that I mentioned, there is a commentary track by Kat Ellinger. Now, let's recall the Criterion release here. The Criterion release, as great as it is and it really is great because, as I said, the supplements are fantastic and it looks marvelous. There is no commentary track. And that's not to say that all commentary tracks that have ever existed are great. Just because there's a commentary track, that doesn't mean that it's automatically awesome and fantastic, right? We have to listen to the contents and we have to decide for ourselves if it's really good or not. Well, I've had the great honor of listening to the Kat Ellinger commentary track for the second run Blu-ray, and I must say that it is really, really great. Kat Ellinger's commentary track is superb, and that's what makes the second run Blu-ray really worth considering if you have to choose between one or the other. This commentary track is something else, I must say. It has a lot of the same information that we found on some of the supplements in the Criterion release and the essays. So you're getting a lot of crossover information. So that's really great. And so if you decide to get the Criterion release without the commentary track by Kat Ellinger, you're still getting a lot, and you're getting a lot of great stuff. Okay, so don't get me wrong. But there's something so wonderful about Kat Ellinger's commentary track, and if I could just give just a few examples as to why. She goes into so much depth and detail about the film because she claims that she really loves this film, and it shows. You can tell that she is such a deep admirer of Hertz's work and the Czech New Wave in general, and Czech cinema in general, and also by extension Polish cinema, because she speaks not just about Czech cinema, she speaks also about Polish cinema, and she talks about the various connections there, and she talks about Hertz and his background as a kind of iconoclast, or maybe someone who's maybe somewhat outside of the mainstream of the New Wave, if you want to call it that. And so it is a very fascinating commentary track given by someone who obviously loves this film and understands this film and who has seen this film so many times. She also talks about the underlying source book upon which this film was based. So the book was written by Ladislav Fuchs, and she talks in great detail about the underlying book and also where the film differs from the book. I mean, there's been the Criterion Supplements also make this point about how the book is a very dialogue-centric work, and there was attempts made by Hertz working in collaboration with the author himself, Fuchs, in order to create the film version of the story, which ended up being the film The Cremator. And so that information is also included on the Criterion Supplements, don't get me wrong. But what Kat Ellinger does so superbly on the second run commentary is that she really goes into specifics as to what the differences are, how certain presentations, say, of the main character and how he views his family, which is a key element of this film, how it differs slightly in the book versus how it's presented in the film. And she also, as I say, talks about the various other filmmakers in contemporary Czech cinema at the time, and how Hertz was a kind of outsider in many ways, not just in terms of his professional background, but also in terms of the subject matter that he was trying to deal with in his stories. Again, a very fascinating take. This is also a great kind of primer on Czech cinema. So if you are one who is maybe being introduced to the first time to Czech cinema, then the Kat Ellinger commentary track is really splendid. It's really wonderful to go to. And so all of this is to say that when you have to choose, or if you have to choose between the Criterion release or the second run release, which one do you go with? Again, it's very difficult. I don't know what to say. On the one hand, this has a really solid, great presentation of the film, and it has a number of supplements. Before I go into that, let me say also that the booklet here has an essay by Daniel Berg. And I must assume, again, I haven't confirmed it, but I have to reasonably assume that Daniel Bird is the same Daniel Bird who was one of the filmmakers responsible for the first supplement documentary that's found on the Criterion release, you know, the German DVD supplement from 2011 that was reworked in 2019 by the Criterion Collection. So I have to assume that it's the same Daniel Bird, and if my assumption is incorrect, please let me know. But my assumption as of now is that it's the same Daniel Bird. And in any event, my friends, Daniel Bird gives us a great lengthy essay that goes into so much. The essay found in the Criterion Collection is really wonderful, but there is something quite special and unique about this because it goes into really some specifics that Criterion Supplements don't go into. For instance, in talking about how certain aspects of the Holocaust and death are portrayed, not just in this film, but in other works by Hertz. There is a little bit of a story or an episode with respect to how Hertz regarded, for example, Steven Spielberg and his work Schindler's List. And it's a very interesting story that, or a very interesting description of Hertz's reaction to a particular scene in Schindler's List. And so that's just an example of a kind of a very, I think, important bit of information that I think the second run release includes that maybe the Criterion Collection maybe doesn't include, in favor of focusing in on other things, let me put it that way. And so going back to a more general comparison, which one is better, that kind of thing. Again, I can't necessarily answer that because it really depends on what you are looking for, of course. If you're looking for a stellar, top-of-the-line presentation, both are good, but perhaps the Criterion's is probably the one with the slight edge. And I think so because of the way that the image looks. Again, it looks spectacular, but the second run is still very, very good. There are some fantastic supplements on here in terms of the documentaries and things like that, focusing in not just on Hertz himself, but also on Lischka and also on Herszynski, the actor. So there's that as well, which we don't necessarily get in the second run Blu-ray. But we do get in the second run Blu-ray the fantastic high-level commentary track by Kat Ellinger, who is not only knowledgeable, so knowledgeable about this film, Hertz's career, and Czech cinema and Polish cinema in general, because she makes connections between Czech cinema and Polish cinema and Hertz's work, which is very fascinating. Not only does she have great knowledge about these subjects and others, but she is also a fan of this film, and her enthusiasm shows so wonderfully. And so it's just one of those things. Which one is better for you? Do you want this with the commentary track in particular, or do you want this with the overall picture quality and other very, very great and strong supplements? So it's really up to you and what it is you're looking for. But in any event, my friends, whatever your choice may be, you will still be getting a presentation of a work of art that is, as I say, very enthralling, very captivating, very terrifying, very funny, and very disturbing and dark and chilling, and thus such an unforgettable work. This is the CREMATOR, and if you haven't seen it yet, oh my goodness, you are in for something, let me tell you. This is one of those films that when you've seen it, almost stunning. It stuns me into silence after I finish watching it. It's that powerful. And so, and it's strong, and it's bold, and it's scary. And it's so vivid, and it's a wonderful thing to have this magnetic, powerful work of art from Uri Hertz in whatever form you prefer, whether it's this or any other DVD release that's out there, because there are many releases of this, my friends. So you have many choices, but whatever it is, please consider at least checking this film out. And with respect to the most recent Criterion release that I have here, this is another option for you in case you're interested. But this film is in the Criterion Collection now. It is at spine number 1023, and it is strongly, strongly recommended. This is Uri Hertz's film, The Cremator. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. Thank you so much again for your time, as always, my friends. And cheers.